Hey, good evening, guys. I want to talk to y'all this evening about a wonderful thing that God gives us in the woods called a walnut. Now, I know most of you guys have eaten walnuts and bought them out of the store, and they're very expensive if you buy them out of the store. And so I collect walnuts every year, bust them up, and we use them for cooking or just eating. But there's many uses for walnuts. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about this evening. And so I have looked at many different options of coming up for busting walnuts, and you guys might know something. You can leave me a note about some other way of busting up walnuts besides digging at them all day with a hammer. But I usually take a hammer and I usually bust them up, and then I take a little small screwdriver, and if I have to, I dig them out. And so I've already busted up 2 quarts this year, one for me, and took 1 quart to my mama, and I've been working on another quart. And so me and Samantha used some of them last night in a cooking show that we done for the Wildlife Women. Everybody, when I was growing up, I remember collected walnuts. Kids would come to school with their fingers stained brown from shelling out the walnuts. I've already shelled out most of the walnuts that I've got. I've got a couple of buckets of the hulls, and so even those are useful. Most people probably throw them over the hill. If they didn't know about it, a lot of people does use them or did use them, so there's many options to use that for. And so I've already been boiling some today, and that's what I wanted to show you this evening is while you're working on these, you can build you up a fire just where you're working at. And so go ahead and eat that one. That's good. I've got my forge going, and I got my little rack over top of it. That way I can cook off of it, or I can boil stuff. And so this cook pot, I filled it up, I don't know, maybe a little less than halfway, and then filled it full of water, and it's been cooking for a couple of hours now. And so occasionally I'll go over here and fire it up a little more, get a little more heat going. But in there right now I have a steel trap, and so I'm going to take me a good stick because this is very, very hot. But this is one thing that trappers use a lot of times. I've got a beaver trap in here, number 4 beaver trap. And I'm trying not to burn my hands. So you can see that's a number 4 beaver trap. And so you can boil these traps in this walnut dye, and that will keep them looking pretty good now. Brushed the rust, got tongue tied on that one. I brushed the rust off of it, and so it's stained it now. It don't have any of my sin on it besides what I touched right there. I'm going to hang these up once they get them all done and just let the rain on them, wash my sin away. But it's dyed now, and it looks more earthy looking. And so that trap is actually ready to go in the water in a couple of weeks when beaver season opens up. I've got some big beavers picked out. And so using walnut hulls to boil, making a solution of dye is one way to make trap dye. And so let me hang this up out of the way. And so something else that we do with this dye is I use it to dye fabric with. I've dyed a lot of muslin shirts. You know, they're usually an off-color white. And so the pioneers learned to use walnut hulls and make dye, and they would dye their clothes brown with them. And so I've even heard about Daniel Boone wearing really dark looking buckskins sometimes. And that's because he had learned how to figure up probably his solution to where it'd be really dark and dye his leather with it. Another thing that walnut hulls can be used for, because they do have a lot of tannins in them, is you can make a tannin solution for your leather that you get from the animals you trap. And so you can tan with walnut hulls. I have heard of it being done. I've never tried it. Someday I'm going to do that. And so if you want to make wood dye, you would boil this on down to a good consistency of more of a thicker type substance. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and get this off because it's been cooking for a while. And I've got a strainer here. You guys probably know what this is. This actually come out of my corn boiling pot. I never use this, but it is a strainer, and so I'm going to strain the big particles out of this. Now I did go ahead and get some of the big stuff out of it a while ago. Safety first, I got my welding gloves. This sucker is hot. And if you can see that pouring out, that is just a deep, rich brown stain. And now I'm about to get down to the sludgy stuff. And so, to be honest with you, if you can see that, I could probably add water to that and cook out of this again, get more dye. You can see it right there for me. Okay. And as you can see, I've got some particles that strained out. Now, excuse me. What I do if I'm going to dye clothes, usually once I strain it through this, I'll take an old towel, wrap it around the top of the bucket, and pour this product through it again. And that way I get all the small little particles out, because if you don't, and you dye, say, a muslin shirt, what you'll end up with is once it's dyed and you wash it, the little chunks will come off and you'll have little specks on your clothes. And so right now I have roughly 3 gallons of some really good stain. Now, I don't know if you can freeze this, but it does freeze in my barn during the winter, so I guess you could freeze it. I usually store it in some gallon jugs. You can pour a bottle of rubbing alcohol in it to kind of keep it from freezing so hard during the winter if you need it. If you're going to dye your clothes, make sure this is cooled off. Wait till it's a cool product to dye clothes. But if you're going to do steel traps, I've got a couple more steel traps here. I've got to get my chains reattached to them. I've been working on these traps some, and I'll end up having to brush this one off good and get my chain reattached to it. And then I will probably just take this, put it back in the bucket, and boil it again, get it hot and boil it, and let this soak in. But as you can see, probably 1.5 gallons of holes, and then probably 2 to 3 gallons of water, and you'll end up with a good 3 gallons of dye. And so that can go a long way, especially if you're going to do clothes, because once you let your clothes soak in it, you're going to wring it right back out. And don't waste that. Just put it back in your bucket and save that for a later period. And so I think the walnut is an awesome nut that God gives us. And so I've almost got this quart jar full. And so the other day I was looking in the store when I went to the store at Walnuts, and if I'm not mistaken, it looked like about what I would call a cup full, a 1 cup full size was about $6. So that's probably $12, $10, $12, $13 worth of walnuts in the store. And since I have hammered these out, if I was going to sell these, I'd have to have $15, $20 a quart for them. And so if you have nothing to do and you just want to sit around and beat out walnuts, you can make a few dollars off of it. But more than anything, we'll eat the far out of these this winter. They won't last long. We love cooking with them, just eating them. I love them in oatmeal, cooking them with, let's say, some apples or something. That would be great. Even put them in your pancakes. So there's many things to do with walnuts. But right now is the perfect time to get out and get them because before long the squirrels are going to start packing them all off. Right now they've come down pretty heavy, and you can find them laying everywhere right now. And so there's 2 different kinds. There's a black walnut and an English walnut, I think they're called. One of them is really long looking, like a big pecan or something, but this is normally what you see most of the time, the black walnut. And so you could pick up, usually you could probably pick up 25-gallon buckets full under one tree, way more than you'll ever need. But I've actually had people calling me and asking me, did I want to come get their walnuts? We've had a bumper crop of them this year. They're laid everywhere in eastern Kentucky. So there should be plenty of these laying around for the squirrels to eat this winter. And I hope that they'll get good and fat off of them, because I like a good squirrel fried up in a skillet occasionally. And so there you go. That's a few tricks that you can do with walnuts. And oh yeah, one I was going to tell you I forgot about. One I really wanted to tell you about. Now, I've never done this, and it's probably illegal to do it, so let me make that clear. It is probably illegal to do what I'm getting ready to tell you. So I've heard stories from my grandpa, people years ago, about different ways to trap fish, catch fish in the creeks. I've heard everything from putting dynamite fuses on the end of a stick and sticking it under a rock and shocking them out. But here's one thing that I've read about, and I'm pretty sure that I've read about Indians doing this time of year. You can take a bunch of these walnut hulls and you can put them in a bag and lay them in the upper part of a stream. If the stream flows this way, you can put them in the upper part of a stream, like a small hole of water you find. And from what I've been told, that depletes the oxygen in the water. And so therefore all the fish in the water will float up to the top, and then they would gather the fish at the bottom of the stream as they were floating up. So as I say, that is probably illegal. You cannot do that. I've never done it. I've only heard about it. But in a survival situation, when you're really just trying to worry about your life, I would probably do it. So we've got nuts to eat. We've got nuts for dyeing traps, or the hulls. We've got the hulls to dye for clothing. We've got the hulls to make like a syrup out of, down to where you could actually stain wood with it. And then you've got the hulls that you could actually use to deplete the oxygen in the water to catch fish. And so that's 5 different things right there that only I know of that these walnuts can do. Now you guys may know more things that they can do. I'm sure there's other options, but I don't know of any other nut that the nut or the hull around it can do 5 different things. So this is definitely a multitask nut, and so I'm very thankful that I get to use them in my everyday life. And so there's a couple of things to look at. And so go out and get you some walnuts right now while they're falling off the trees and while they're just laying everywhere. All right, God bless you guys.